Have you ever stood at a crossroads in life where one path promised wealth, comfort, and status, while the other offered nothing but sacrifice, uncertainty, and a quiet act of kindness? Most people would choose the first path. Most people would take the money, secure their future, and tell themselves they would do good later, when life was easier. But this is a story about a young woman who chose differently. And though the world laughed at her choice, life itself would one day repay her in ways she never expected. Her name was Emily Parker. She grew up in a small town in Kansas, the kind of place where the streets are quiet after sundown, where everyone knows your name, and where people carry their past in their eyes. Emily's family wasn't rich. Her father worked long shifts at a local lumber mill, and her mother ran a small bakery out of their kitchen to help make ends meet. Emily often helped her mother knead dough in the early mornings before school, her hands dusted with flour while the scent of bread filled the air. From a young age, Emily learned what it meant to live with less, but also what it meant to live with love. Her parents taught her something that no school could: kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. They often helped neighbors who had less than they did. Her mother would send loaves of bread quietly to struggling families, and her father would fix a neighbor's roof without asking for payment. Emily absorbed these lessons like sunlight, though she didn't know then how much they would shape her life later. By the time Emily was in her 20s, she was ambitious. She studied hard, graduated with honors, and got a job in the city. For the first time, she saw the kind of money her family had never known. She lived in a small apartment, but it was hers. She bought clothes without worrying whether they were on clearance. And every paycheck made her feel like she was finally breaking free of the cycle of struggle that had defined her childhood. But beneath the excitement of her new life, Emily felt a pull, an invisible thread tugging at her heart. Every time she passed a homeless man sitting under a bridge, or an elderly woman counting coins at the grocery store, something inside her shifted. She wanted to help, but then the doubts would creep in. You need to save money first. You need to secure your future. You can't solve everyone's problems. And so she walked on, telling herself she'd give back later when she had more. One autumn afternoon, Emily was offered a promotion at work, a big one. It came with a salary that could transform her life. She would finally be able to pay off her student loans, buy a house, maybe even help her parents retire earlier. But there was a catch. The job required her to relocate across the country, to a city far from her family, far from the small town she called home. It also demanded long hours, ruthless decision-making, and a willingness to put profit above people. The same day she received the offer, Emily returned to her hometown to visit her parents. The leaves were turning golden, and the crisp air carried with it the smell of her mother's baking. She walked through the streets she had known since childhood. And that's when she saw him, a boy sitting outside the library with a torn backpack, shivering in the cold. His clothes were thin, his shoes worn down. Next to him sat a small stack of school books. Emily stopped. Something about him reminded her of herself years ago, when she sat at her kitchen table, dreaming of a life bigger than her circumstances. She asked him gently, "Why are you sitting out here?" The boy looked up, hesitant, and said, "I come here after school to read. My mom works nights, and we don't have heat at home right now. It's warmer here." Her heart broke. She learned his name was Tyler. He was only 12 years old, but already carrying the weight of survival on his small shoulders. His mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. They lived in a rundown apartment, barely making rent each month. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She thought about the boy, about his mother, about the choices she had in front of her. On one hand, she had a promotion waiting, a future lined with wealth and comfort. On the other, she had the chance to do something selfless, something that wouldn't benefit her financially at all. The next morning, Emily made a decision that would change everything. She called her employer and declined the promotion. Instead, she used her savings money she had been keeping aside for her future to help Tyler and his mother. She paid off their overdue bills, bought them proper clothes, and made sure their home had heat again. Her friends called her foolish. "You can't save everyone, Emily. You just gave up a huge opportunity. What about your future?" But Emily didn't care. She had seen the relief on Tyler's mother's face, the gratitude in her eyes, and the joy when Tyler ran through his warm apartment for the first time in weeks. For Emily, that was worth more than any paycheck. Over time, Emily became more involved in her community. She started a small nonprofit to support struggling families, using her skills, connections, and determination. It was hard. She didn't have the financial security her promotion would have given her. She had to sacrifice vacations, luxuries, and sometimes even sleep. But she kept going, because each life she touched reminded her of the boy she had met outside the library. Years passed. Her nonprofit grew slowly, then steadily. Families who once had nothing now had food, clothing, and access to education. Children who would have dropped out of school found hope again. And though Emily never became rich in money, she became rich in something far deeper, the wealth of love, gratitude, and the knowledge that she had made a real difference. Then, one evening, life repaid her in a way she could never have predicted. She was attending a charity event when a tall young man approached her. He introduced himself with a smile. "Emily, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Tyler." She blinked, stunned. The boy from the library now stood before her, grown into a confident young man. He told her that because of her help, he had stayed in school, gone to college, and now worked as a teacher helping kids who came from the same struggles he once knew. Tears filled Emily's eyes as he said, "You changed my life, and I've spent mine trying to do the same for others." At that moment, Emily realized something powerful. Kindness is never wasted. What you give away, the world finds a way to return, not always in money, not always in fame, but in ways that touch the soul. She had chosen kindness over wealth. And life had repaid her with something wealth could never buy: legacy, impact, and love that would outlive her. And that is the lesson I want you to carry with you today. The world will always tempt you with wealth, status, and the promise of comfort. But when you're gone, none of that will matter. What will matter is the lives you touched, the kindness you gave, the love you left behind. So the next time you stand at a crossroads, ask yourself, will I choose wealth or will I choose kindness? One may fill your pockets, but the other will fill your soul. And in the end, it is the soul that matters most. Because Emily's story shows us a truth that we often forget: when you choose kindness, life will always find a way to repay you.